When we think of the prancing horses of Scuderia Ferrari, we think of one colour, red. Virtually every Ferrari production car and race car is most well known with its trademark Rosso Corsa colour scheme ever since the inception of the company back in 1939. Obviously Ferrari cars don't have to be red, but in Formula 1 at least they've always kept their cars the same red for as long as anyone can remember. However, there was one instance where Ferrari broke tradition and ran their cars in a blue and white livery, following an intense argument with the FIA. And today I'm going to be talking about just that and how this car made its way into Formula 1. This is the story of Formula 1's elusive blue Ferrari. Throughout the 1964 Formula 1 season, Ferrari raced their red 158 by their two-star drivers in John Surtees and Lorenzo Bandini. The 10-race-long 1964 season started off relatively poorly for them, with them only scoring in the points twice in the first 5 races, which is familiar nowadays. But anyway, by the end of round 5 at Brands Hatch, they were 4th in the constructors behind BRM, Brabham and the dominating Lotus team at the hands of Jim Clark. But by round 6 at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, Ferrari finally managed to win and slowly but surely close the gap in the constructors to the teams in front. And luck would continue to be on their side, with another 2 back-to-back wins, being F1's one-off appearance at Zeltwig for the Austrian Grand Prix, and in front of their adoring fans at their home race being the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. So by this point, the Rosso Corsa red Ferrari 158 had put the team from 4th into 1st place in the constructors in the span of just a couple of races. But however, while all this was happening, behind the scenes the notoriously ruthless Enzo Ferrari was in the midst of a bad relationship with both the ACI, the organisation behind Italian motorsport, and the FIA. Tension between them was thought to have begun as early as 1962, but 1964 was the year this tension really began to reach its peak. The main controversy began when Enzo Ferrari wanted to homologate the road-going Ferrari 250 GTO to be eligible for GT racing, specifically in large endurance events such as the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The FIA allowed this under the deal that the company would have to manufacture at least 100 more 250 GTOs in order for them to be able to get their cars homologated and be allowed to go racing. And also, as a quick side note, the 250 GTO nowadays is the most expensive car to have ever been sold at a crazy $44 million. But anyway, this task did not sit well at all with Enzo. Manufacturing 100 250 GTO sports cars would take too much time and resource and of course money, with the company eventually only being able to make 39 of the original 100 required. But Enzo Ferrari was not going to give up that easily, as while the FIA inspectors made their way over to Ferrari's base in Maranello, they hatched a cunning plan. When the FIA came to inspect Ferrari's supposed 100 250 GTOs, they eventually gave them the thumbs up and were satisfied with their cars, despite the fact they only actually had 39 cars produced. You see, the inspectors walked around the area thoroughly inspecting every single car, but little did they know that whenever they would take a break, the cars they had already approved would be moved to another part of the factory, which gave off the illusion that they kept on seeing new cars, when in actuality they were seeing the same 39 cars moved around as they continued their inspection, tricking them into thinking they'd seen 100. However, fast forward a while later and the FIA must have realised their mistake by the time they denied Ferrari the homologation of their new 250 LM. And it's unclear how much of this decision was influenced by Ferrari's trick with the 100 250 GTOs, but regardless, the 250 LM was definitely not permitted to race in the FIA GT class. As you can probably imagine, Enzo Ferrari was absolutely furious, and as a result of the FIA and ACI's decision, he said he would never race in red, the national racing colour of Italy, ever again. He then partnered his F1 campaign with the North American racing team and adopted the national racing colours of the USA, being blue and white, resulting in the infamous blue Ferrari. At this point in 1964, sponsors didn't yet appear on cars, so it was mandatory for all F1 cars to follow the national racing colours of their respective countries. For example, dark green for the UK, red for Italy, blue for France, silver for Germany, and so Ferrari's partnership with an American team meant they had to change their F1 cars to fit the colours of the USA, being dark blue and white. So now coming back to the 1964 F1 season, and Lorenzo Bandini and John Surtees drove the cars in blue for the final 2 rounds of the season, being the finale at the Mexican Grand Prix at this place, which is now called the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and before that the United States Grand Prix at the incredibly fast classic layout of Watkins Glen as the penultimate round of the 1964 championship. At this race, the blue Ferrari of John Surtees finished on the podium in second, 30 seconds behind the winner Graham Hill, and the other Ferrari of Bandini was forced to retire after an engine problem. After this race, Ferrari was still in the lead of the Constructors' Championship, just 1 single point of the BRM team of Richie Ginther and Graham Hill behind the wheel. And Ferrari's lead driver John Surtees was now second in the Drivers' Championship, and all will be decided at the final race of the season in Mexico. Coming into the 1964 Mexican Grand Prix, John Surtees, Graham Hill and Jim Clark were all in contention to take the championship. For our blue Ferrari driver John Surtees to win the championship, he would either have to win the race or come second, providing Graham Hill came 4th or lower. For Graham Hill to win the championship, he could afford to not even finish in the points at all, providing that either Surtees or Clark don't win the race. And for Jim Clark to win the championship, he would have to win the race, providing that Surtees finished 3rd or lower and Hill finished 4th or lower. Throughout the race, Surtees was stuck in a distant 5th place, far away from the front of the pack, until his teammate Bandini crashed into Graham Hill, sending him into a spin and out of contention for the World Championship. Now at this point, if the position stayed the same, Jim Clark would take the title until the penultimate lap of the race, where Jim Clark's engine broke down with just 1 lap left to go. Realising the criteria could now be met for Surtees to become champion, the team manager of Ferrari signalled to Bandini to let teammate Surtees pass into 2nd place, allowing Surtees to finish the race in P2, enough to clinch him the World Championship by just 1 single point over Graham Hill, also making him the only F1 champion to date to be a champion on both 4 and 2 wheels. Of course, this title was incredibly lucky. Jim Clark would have taken the title if not for his engine problem on the penultimate lap, and Graham Hill could have taken the title if he hadn't been spun round earlier in the race. But regardless, John Surtees was the 1964 Formula 1 World Champion, driving in the now infamous blue Ferrari, leaving a mark in the history books. After this dramatic 1964 season finale, Ferrari would never race again without their traditional Rosso Corsa colour scheme, as they still do today. Despite the blue Ferrari only making appearances in 2 F1 Grand Prix, it definitely left its mark in the sport, and will be remembered as the only time Ferrari ever raced without their famous red livery. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe, comment, share, and I'll be back in the next video. See ya!